Who's making the cut? Which cornerbacks and safeties will make the Rams' final 53-man roster, and why they should go out there and sign a former Ram to help the secondary? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramlian? Welcome to another edition of Locked On Rams, your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcast. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you want to find the video version of the show, join the party on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. We just passed 7,000 subscribers, and it's all thanks to you. And let us know, what are your thoughts on this Rams secondary and who you want to see make that final 53-man roster, and should they go out there and bring back John Johnson III. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMac_LA. You might know me for covering the Lakers for SI, the Dodgers for Dodgers Nation, but now I'm covering the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio network, ESPN 710 LA, the People's Champion, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on Twitter at Travis Rogers. Now, Travis, before we get into it, yesterday, Puka Nacua on Twitter, there was a meme that you had to bench one of these players, and there were 6 NBA players. You had LeBron, Jordan, Curry, Kobe, KD, and Shaq, and he benched Kobe. I don't know if that's something when you got to buy an LA team, man.
Yeah. No. Look, maybe you can make the argument that you have some positional redundancy and that Kobe's the odd man out. Not in LA, it's not. Never. You do not put Kobe on the bench if you're playing in LA ever. That's how that goes. He'll learn. The Kobe stands will educate him very, very quickly.
Exactly. Yeah, they're going to light him up on Twitter. You can't do that. Puka Nacua. There you go. It's your warning sign. Kobe, he is the man here in LA.
Yep.
And so let's get into it. So we're going to talk about today on this show. We're going to talk about a lot of heavy cornerback talk. We're going to talk about who can take over that star position that was manned by Jalen Ramsey for so many years. We're going to talk about which cornerbacks and safeties will ultimately make this 53-man roster. But we're going to start with PFF's grade on the secondary. PFF released its secondary rankings for the upcoming season, and the Rams are ranked dead last. Last year, PFF had them ranked inside the top 10 to start the year at number 9, but dead last, 32 out of 32. And it's understandable, right? You don't have any high draft picks. You didn't make any big signings. You lose Jalen Ramsey. You lose Taylor Rapp, Troy Hill, Nick Scott, all those guys that have made up one of the better secondaries in the league. They're not here, and a lot of inexperience. So I think it's understandable.
Yeah, look, I think you kind of laid it out really well, Doug. I think that the biggest part of it, though, is the departure of Jalen Ramsey. I think Jalen Ramsey had that inflated to a point that was much more reflective of the type of player that he is than it was reflective of the type of players the group was, right? That Jalen Ramsey, even though last year may have been not the greatest Jalen Ramsey season of all time, Jalen Ramsey's still arguably the best player at that position in the entire league. So if you have him in your group, if you have him in your cornerbacks room, it's obviously going to elevate the group just because he's there. Well, obviously he's not here anymore. He's in Miami. All those other players you mentioned, guys like Nick Scott and some others that have decided, Troy Hill, that have gone to other places. You look at what they have right now, I'm not surprised. I don't think that they're going to have a terrible secondary. I don't think that it's going to be something that's going to absolutely destroy their chances to win games, but this is about the departure of Jalen Ramsey more than anything else.
Yeah, it starts right there. It starts at the top. You're talking about a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 3-time All-Pro, a guy that just takes away, he manipulates the offense, right? Most of the time you're reactive on defense. He's a guy that can manipulate the offense and make big plays. And yeah, the reality is you go from filet mignon in Ramsey to mystery meat in a lot of the guys we have right now. And look, the reality is maybe these guys could be good. Maybe they do hit on it. Look, there's a lot of talk about the UDFAs and how many draft picks. If you hit on half of them, that's pretty much a successful draft. That is how you have sustainable winning. But as far as this team, it's the inexperience. They didn't go out there, like I said, make those big signings, and they're going to fill those holes. They're going to fill those voids, and they're going to do it internally. Guys like Kobe Durant, Darion Kendrick, Jordan Fuller, Russ Yeast, We're going to talk about them in the next segment a little more in depth. But yeah, just when you look at the talent there, I mean, do you think the cupboard is bare? Do you think that, hey, maybe these guys can step up? Because I see the talent in a lot of these guys, but it's not necessarily top end talent. Maybe Kobe Durant, he steps up. I don't see these guys that could be Pro Bowlers or any elite guys. I think at the very best, you hope they're above average and they're able to play this defense that doesn't want to give touchdowns. They want to give up field goals and kind of play within that system.
I think this is going to be one of these things that Rams fans probably don't want to hear, but I also think it's true. I think that this season is an opportunity for them to figure out which of those guys that you just mentioned are the most talented. Which of these guys are the guys that you're going to be able to lean on moving forward. This is not a year necessarily, and obviously things can change. You get off to a good start, you can kind of start looking at this a little bit differently. This is an opportunity for the coaching staff, for the front office to evaluate what it is they have. Do they have guys like, Kobe Durant that are talented? Sure. Do they have guys like Rob Rochelle who have been in there for a little while and, never really gotten that full extended look like you'd like? 2 years ago, he was just on the cusp of being named a starter. Then Darius Williams comes back and all of a sudden he kind of falls into that secondary role again. I think this is going to be we want him. Maybe we can live without him. It's going to be an evaluation year across the board. They're going to find some guys that are really good. They're going to find some guys that can play. The other thing is, though, they're probably going to find some guys that can't, and that may cost them some opportunities early in the season, may cost them a win or two. This is an opportunity to see what you have for what's coming next.
Yeah, and I think at this point that if you can find some of these cornerbacks, some of these guys that can step up, then you're going to feel good about it. But the reality of the situation is I just think the ceiling isn't very high. I think ideally Kobe Durant, he's the one that if he stepped up, if he emerges and he's that breakout guy, that's going to go a long way. Because if you play him on the outside, maybe you can have Tomlinson on the inside, have THT in there playing the slot. That definitely to me is going to be what's really going to be the big indicator of, hey, are they having success? But even a team with Aaron Donald is still, on paper, they are one of the worst defenses. There's no way around it. When they take on the Seahawks on September 10th, you're talking about starters at all positions. And I think when it speaks to you trade Ramsey, you don't bring back Rab Hill and Nick Scott. I think if they're serious about really going out there and winning the season, making a playoff push, I would love to see them go out there and maybe bring a John Johnson back or a Troy Hill or someone that has a little bit of a veteran presence. Like if you go to a camp, right, you can't have all kids. You need some camp counselors, right, to keep these kids in line. I think it would benefit from that.
Well, sure, unless that's not the goal. If the goal is something other than that, then it's makes a whole lot of sense, right? And again, this comes back to what are you doing, not what are you saying. And what they're doing is they're putting their last line of defense in an incredibly vulnerable position for all the reasons that you just mentioned. That this is a position that historically the Rams have looked at as an opportunity to kind of really buckle down. Aaron Donald has always been kind of the backbone of this defense, but think about the guys that they've had there aside from Jalen Ramsey. You're talking about Aqib Talib. You're talking about Marcus Peters. You're talking about a guy like Nickel Roby-Coleman, who maybe isn't a star like Talib and Peters were, but was a longtime vet in this league, a really good NFL player, somebody that you could play all over the field. And they've gone the exact opposite direction. They've gone very, very inexperienced, very, very young. And I think you're right. I think that it's going to be something that ultimately is a challenge for them, unless these guys are a lot more talented than maybe you and I and some others might think that they are. But that may not be the goal.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to go that route, then that's what makes sense. And you can sell it on the idea that, hey, we don't know what we have with these guys until we play them. It's like the Family Guy scene with the mystery box. And he's like, you can have a boat or the mystery box. And Peter's like, yeah, I can have a boat. We don't know what's in that box. It could be the key to a hangar that has 12 boats, right? You open it up, it's 2 tickets to a comedy show. Yeah. And Peter's like, oh, when have I ever done something that's stupid to Lois? They cut back to the scene once again. Yeah, you just never know. Sometimes you want to go with the mystery box and see what's in there. And if some of these guys emerge, that allows you to allocate those resources and that cap space to other positions. But still, I think you look at the inexperience, 267 combined snaps. With the safety guys, with Lake, Yeast, and Fuller. And we're going to talk about some of these guys more in depth in the next segment. But yeah, on paper, it does look like there's a potential that they could get towards. But I believe that maybe if they like what they see, that you go out, if a veteran cornerback that they like becomes available, maybe you add him, maybe you evaluate during training camp. And I also think, too, that if you look at this team as a whole, if you look at the running game and you're trying to establish that running game, it controls the clock. I mean, there's other factors too, and just trying to keep this defense off the field as much as possible. But we're going to talk about who's going to make this 53-man roster in the secondary. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
All right, D-Mac, but before we do that, let's talk about our fans at FanDuel. You can take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to be the first home run, all on an app that is safe and secure and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. Just throwing it out there, maybe Ohtani to do something insane. That seems like a pretty safe bet nowadays. There's no better place to place your bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball.
Well, welcome back to Locked On Rams. We're off and running here on Locked On Rams. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find us over on YouTube. Join the party there. And a special shout out to our everyday listeners, too. We appreciate you. And you can join the Everyday Members Club, too. Just subscribe and listen every single day, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. But here in our second segment, Travis, we're taking a look at which of these members of the cornerbacks in the secondary group of the safeties will ultimately make this 53-man roster. I think the biggest log absolutely has to be Kobe Durant.
Yeah.
And you saw he definitely flashed. I mean, he had 3 interceptions. He led all NFL players with 151 interception return yards in 2022. Former 4th-round pick. If you look at the potential, a 75.2 PFF grade, that ranked 18th among all cornerbacks. So he has flashed. He has shown potential. Do you think he can be that breakout guy that some people hope? Because I definitely think it's definitely a potential, and I kind of see it.
Yeah, I think that he's the guy that's most likely to make you go, hey, did he make another play? Did he get another one? Wow, he had, at the end of the season, he's got 4 or 5 interceptions. I think that he's obviously the most likely candidate for that. I think where it gets a little bit trickier, though, for him is similar to the way that it got a little more challenging for a player like Jalen Ramsey. Once they identify the guy that is most likely to make a play against you, they go other places. And I think that the other places are going to be abundant in the Rams secondary, that there are going to be opportunities on other guys. So if Durant really does start to perform, if he really does start to pop at a level that we kind of turn our heads collectively, I think they stop going at him. Now, that's a good sign. That's really good news for the Rams that they have a guy like that, but the numbers may not jump out at you the way that they did last year, because even with Jalen Ramsey, by his standards, having a relatively down year, we're not going to go at number 5. They're still going to go somewhere else, and that gives guys, whether it was Darius Williams a few years ago, whether it was somebody like Kobe Durant this year, they are going at other guys and staying away from the number 1 guy.
Yeah, that's the ultimate compliment. If we see that, that's how you know things are going the right way. He's the one guy that I am bullish on. I like the talent. Yeah. I like the speed. The only question I have is, can he get it done on the outside? Last year played nickel, 70% of the snaps he was in. If he can handle on the outside and you have Trey Tomlinson on the slot there, he can do damage. I think that, to me, it would be the biggest development. So I see the potential. I think Kobe Durant absolutely is a guy that could be one of the stars on this defense in due time. But next, of course, you got Darion Kendrick. So Kendrick, he's a guy you worry about the speed. I mean, you worry about, are they going to target him? Are they going to attack him and expose him? Last year, he was targeted in coverage 56 times, and that was the 4th highest total on defense. I mean, talent-wise, I don't think it's explosive. I think he plays the sideline, use that technique. He can absolutely be serviceable at best.
Well, like you said, right, this is the opposite of what we just talked about. That this is where is he? Oh, he's over there. All right, throw it at him. Right. There's a funny story that I remember. I think it was Michael Irvin was talking about when he was playing against the Green Bay Packers back in the 90s, and they would break the huddle and he would find Terrell Buckley and say, all right, look, I'm just going to match up on him wherever he goes because I know that I can kill him over and over. Where's T-Buck when they break the huddle? I think there's a little bit of that going on, which is just, all right, this is somebody that maybe isn't up to the standard that it needs to be, and you're going to go in. That the good news is gives you opportunities, right, D-Mac? That if somebody's constantly coming at you, it gives you a chance to make some plays and kind of establish yourself like that. The flip side of it, too, is if they keep coming at you, keep making plays, you're probably not long for the league.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely, you say when teams don't go at you, that shows the sign of respect. And then the flip side is when they see you as a mismatch. And last year when he was in the game, they looked at him as a mismatch, a guy that they want to expose. The one pro with him, he definitely got some experience. He faced over twice the number of passes that Kobe Durant did with 25. The bad news, though, is like you said, he was targeted. And I think he is a little limited athletically. I think he's going to have trouble with receivers downfield. And that's kind of my concern when it comes to him. And also you look at some of the receivers they're going to be facing early on this season. You got the Bengals, you got the Seahawks, you got the 49ers. I mean, it's going to be a tough test early on. This team, they come out of the gates and their secondary is getting towards. I think Kendrick is the guy you're going to possibly be looking at. I mean, game 3 versus Cincinnati, it's going to be a big test for him. So hopefully it won't be barbecue chicken for Darion Kendrick, but he's definitely going to be on the team, though.
Yeah, you mentioned it. You think about guys in your division alone, right? You're talking about Deebo Samuel. You're talking about DK Metcalf. You're talking about a guy like Brandon Ayuk. You're talking about some guys that can really give it to you along the way. And look, even if you've got one guy to cover Deebo Samuel, you got Ayuk on the other side. There's going to be mismatches. It feels like a lot of those mismatches are going to be on Kendrick's plate. He's going to have to step up, or they're going to try someone else. And like, this is the best part about the NFL, right? The thing that makes the NFL so much fun is you get an opportunity to earn your stripes. You get an opportunity to play another set of downs, to play another series. And if you don't, they're going to keep looking until they find someone who can. The opportunity is right there in front of them. This is somebody that came in that had some modest expectations last year, probably, hit the modest expectations. And this is an opportunity for him to take a step forward. If it doesn't happen, they'll move on to somebody else.
Yeah, and I do think what he has going for him, he's strong, he's savvy, and I think that makes up for some of his lack of athleticism. But yeah, like you said, this is the NFL. It's like Top Gun. They're all elite. They're all top of their game. It's just who's the best of the best. So, yeah. And then you got THT, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson. Of course, we always undersized, 5'8", 178 pounds. I think he's going to see a ton of snaps as a rookie. I think he's going to be one of the big topics of conversation when training camp hits, just because his charisma, his fight, his feistiness. I'm pretty high on this guy. I think if he was a couple inches taller, he would have been a first or second round pick. But I think this is a guy who could definitely have an impact in year 1.
Yeah, rookies are tricky, right, D-Mac? That you got guys that have a set of skills. You got guys that can maybe run. You got guys that maybe play, ball defenders and things like this. But this is a league that does not forgive inexperience very quickly. That if you come in super green and you make a mistake or two, these NFL quarterbacks, these NFL coordinators, they recognize it like that, right? That's just instantly, that's a guy that we can go at. He's going to have to spend a ton of time in the classroom. He's going to have to spend a ton of time around some older players, which kind of goes back to what you were talking about a minute ago. Rams don't have a ton of older players. They don't have a ton of guys that, Jalen Ramsey can say, okay, when they set you up like this, this is what's coming next. They don't have that guy in that room right now. So he's got a double challenge, not only of being a rookie in this league coming in, which is a challenge for anybody, but being a rookie in a league where you're looking around the other players in your position group and there's nobody there that's been around the block time and time again and says, here's what they're trying to do against you and here's how you combat it. He's going to have to learn on the job, which can be a really difficult assignment.
It's a difficult assignment. I think this is a guy who's been doubted his whole career. Of course, he has the brand name, a Tomlinson name. Sure. We know that. But at the same time, I love how he leans all the way in to the chip on his shoulder. He loves to be doubted. He already said that he's going to make sure this is the greatest pick the Rams have ever had. That's his mentality. That's his mindset. That's what I love to see. Also, too, I want to see him immediately help this Rams defense in the quick game. It was death by paper cuts, a lot of quick game, a lot of dink and dunk against this Rams team. Last year, he was targeted 81 times, allowed just 28 catches for 365 yards. Also led the nation with 21 forced incompletions and allowed a passer rating of 42.5. So the stats are there. I think he's going to be strong and aggressive. He's going to want to silence some of the downers and make some of those teams that didn't pick him have some regret. And then,
he does know that Aaron Donald got drafted by the Rams, right? He's aware of that was a pretty good draft pick too. Hey,
shoot for the – hey, man, he's high expectations. What more can you see? Yeah, that's a good point.
Value, right? Aaron Donald at least was taken in the first round, so maybe he's talking greatest value pick in the history of the Rams.
hey, shoot for the stars, aim for the moon, right? So you got to love the mentality at least. So and there's Sean Jolly. So Sean Jolly, of course, not a lot of experience, 5'9", 180 pounds, undrafted free agent out of Appalachian State. Love that win against Michigan. Second year in the NFL, was only active in 2 games for the Rams last season, and his 6 total snaps came on special teams. So this one, it almost defies any type of conversation because he's a complete mystery as far as NFL experience. But we're going to talk about Sean Jolly as a possible replacement in that star role. But any thoughts on Sean Jolly? I think he's aggressive. He's feisty. He definitely has some potential to have some sort of impact on this team. But we have to see it. We have to see him kind of realize that on the field.
Yeah, he's got to make the team, first of all, right? He's got to make the team. He's got to play well in the preseason. He's got to play well in camp. That there are guys here that we are not going to spend a ton of time talking about, like a guy like Sean Jolly, just because it's not something that's front of mind. But maybe as the season gets in, these are the guys that get me excited, because a guy that comes in that maybe isn't somebody that you're like, okay, we need to get whatever XYZ from this player. It's more like, oh, is he going to make that? Okay, maybe makes a play on special teams here or there. Maybe gets called into some action because of an injury or a blowout or whatever, and gets some. It's like, oh, that looked pretty good. And then a little bit more and a little bit more. And the next thing you know, it's like, hey, we might have something here. I think he falls into that category as somebody that's going to have to wait for his opportunity. And when it does come, he's going to have to hit it hard, because if you miss that initial one, there's no guarantee that a second one's coming around.
Yeah, exactly. You had to take advantage of opportunity when he has it. The good thing for him, though, is a perfect situation, a perfect opportunity for a guy like that to come up and step up and thrive. And you look at the safety spots, of course, you got Jordan Fuller, 60 tackles and 3 interceptions in 12 games as a rookie. Then you got those green dot duties in 2021, but only played 3 games in 2022 due to that hamstring injury. I think he's a guy that if you look at OTAs, you look at some of the quotes in minicamp, that they're looking for him to step up and be a leader. And he's the grizzled veteran of this Rams secondary at this point.
I was just going to say, that's what's so crazy about Fuller, is that it feels like just a minute ago that he was like the kid that just got here and he's kind of figuring it out as he goes. And that's the way that it's supposed to be. And now you look around, it's like, well, okay, well, you tell me where the lunchroom is. You tell me how Sean McVay responds. You tell me all the, like, he's the guy that, like we were talking about a minute ago, whether it's Tomlinson or anybody else, they're like, well, what's going on right here? He's the guy that they're going to turn to, and he's just getting started in his NFL career at all. So he's that 34-year-old grandfather, right? It's like, well, I'm still figuring out how to be a dad. I don't know how to be a grandpa at 34 years old. That's kind of the role that he's going to slide into, and good luck with that. Obviously the Rams have hold him in very high regard, because he's one of the few guys from the most recent draft classes or so that's still around, that the Rams must think very highly of him, to give him that dot like you're talking about, and to let him be the mentor to a bunch of very young players.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's the man of the house now in that secondary. And then, of course, you got Russ Yeast, 7th-round pick out of Kansas State.
I like him a lot. Yeast.
I like Yeast too. Yeah. I think that this is a guy that doesn't have a lot of track record or history, but in those 15 games, started 20 tackles, 16 solo. But that doesn't tell the whole story for him. I think the potential is absolutely there athletically. And I think he just has that football mindset, that football spirit that I think is going to play up for him.
He was one of those guys, D-Mac, too, that Russ Yeast was, that just when you would watch the games, you're like, oh, it's another nice play by Yeast. He popped. You noticed him out there. He was a guy that was around the ball a lot. He was, as a guy that was in on plays, and maybe not a guy that's going to be a star in this league, but a guy that can be a player, a starting player on your team potentially. Those are incredibly valuable. I think he could be one of those guys.
Yeah, I think he really stood out. I agree. I think he's poised to definitely take an enhanced role on this team. And he's a guy that, you might not know about if you're a casual fan or someone that's just kind of, after they had a losing season last year, you kind of checked out. But he's a guy I think is going to impress a lot of fans as well. And, of course, Quentin Lake, my Bruin, he's a guy, of course, the heritage is there. His dad, of course, Pro Bowl cornerback, 9 games, 10 tackles, 8 solo, 1 sack. He's a big guy. He's a guy that I think has a higher ceiling. We'll see if he can put it all together. And, of course, you got Jason Taylor II. He's a guy that I think absolutely is going to crack that 53-man roster, a 7th-round pick of this year's draft. A guy can stop the run, a guy that's big and physical, not afraid to make a tackle. And there's Quindale Johnson. Quindale Johnson, to me, is the diamond in the rough. He could be the steal as a UDFA out of Memphis. He can play that safety role, play that hang role. Not the fastest guy at 4.5 40, but This is a guy also big and physical, and I think he's going to turn heads at training camp. I absolutely do.
Well, I think that's it, right? I think that this is one of those groups that has a real battle in the camp. That whether or not guys play in preseason games, we know Sean McVay's record with that. He doesn't really like to put guys that he's going to count on in preseason games or exhibition games or whatever we're calling those things. So I think that his performance at camp is going to be the most important part. And all those players that you just mentioned, they are competing. There are more players than there are spots available. And you're going to see some incredibly competitive practices, inter squads, in those dual workouts, joint practices. I think those guys are going to make the team in their performances or not make the team based on their performances in those events.
I'm telling you, Quindale Johnson, ball skills, doesn't miss tackles, physical. I think he could be a dude. But coming up quickly in our final segment here, we're talking about that star role. Who's going to take over the star role for the Rams? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. And coming up here in our final segment, we're talking about the star role. Who will be the Rams' next star? Of course, Jalen Ramsey, he played the star position for the Rams since Brandon Staley was the defensive coordinator. Then Raheem Morris, he continued to deploy him there in that role, just lining him up in the slot. So really, if you don't know what the star role is, basically a hybrid linebacker, defensive back position. You're brought in on passing downs and any downs, really, just so you can make plays and be physical. You got to be able to read and react like a safety, cover like a cornerback, and basically tackle like a linebacker. Now, of course, there is no Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey is a top 10 to 15 player in the league. He's one of one, but Raheem Morris thinks that Kobe Durant, Sean Jolly could fill that role. I don't see it as far as right away, but I think they're going to still play them in that role and see how they perform.
Yeah, I think this is one of those good news, bad news situations, right? The good news is that they have opportunities to fill the role that you're describing right now. The bad news is I don't know if there's anybody that jumps to the front of the mind as far as who's the most likely candidate to be there. Those guys are hard to find. A lot of teams don't have it. You can put me in a position or put the player in a position to try to fill that kind of that Jalen Ramsey role that you're describing. But you got to have Jalen Ramsey type skills. Jalen Ramsey's 6'3", he's strong, he's fast, he's smart. He's all of these things that, excuse me, kind of led him to become the player he is. It's not just, okay, we'll put you in that spot. You got to do the same things. You got to have the same tools in your toolbox, and not a lot of Jalen Ramseys out there. And look, like I said multiple times on today's pod, there are going to be opportunities for people. If you do well in those opportunities, you're going to get more opportunities, which is all that you can ask for. But I honestly, Doug, I really don't see anybody. I'm like, that guy right there is going to be the guy that we're all talking about in the middle of the season is the guy that's popped. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I just don't see one on this defense that's not wearing number 99.
Yeah, what Jalen Ramsey, what made him so unique is you had the size. It was the size plus the quickness. With Durant, with Jolly, you don't have the size and the quickness and all those physical attributes. And there's a reason why Ramsey was a top pick. There's a reason why he was a 5-star recruit, right? He was a very unique athlete. But I think Kobe Durant, I think he has the ability to make plays in spaces and just be aggressive. And I think it's more of just how they're going to use him versus being the next Jalen Ramsey. You're not going to find another Jalen Ramsey. But still, I think Raheem Morris is going to need a guy to step up. And I think Kobe Durant has the best chance to be that guy. But also, too, I think it's a lot to put on a guy that you're saying, can he be an outside cornerback? Can he be a slot guy? I mean, I think from a position standpoint, we just have to see if he can play consistently before we launch any type of titles as far as star role and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That let's make sure that we can walk before we can run, right? Let's make sure that you know your assignments, that you know what you need to do, right? That this is one of the things that I've learned from all the NFL guys that I've worked with over the years. The very first thing an offensive coordinator is going to do when they go up again, they're going to test your rules. Do you know where you're supposed to be? Do you follow the schematic of your defense? Because if you don't, if I can catch you freelancing, if I know that you're going to violate your own rules, I'm going to tear you to pieces. And so this is one of these things. I understand Jalen Ramsey can violate his own rules because he knows when, he knows how to cover, and knows when it's an opportunity to take a chance or not. I don't need young players trying those things until we really kind of lock down the fundamentals of what that defense is. And just very quickly, Doug, before we go, I think that the exciting part of all this is Raheem Morris knows what he's doing. He's a really good defensive coach, and he's going to put guys in a position to be successful. He's going to put guys in a position to maximize the opportunities they're getting. And if he likes it, I love it.
Yeah, no, exactly. He knows how to identify talent. He knows how to optimize guys and put guys in positions where they can succeed. But I think he's more Roby Coleman or more Troy Hill than he is Jalen Ramsey. I think he's going to take a big step forward. But as far as how he's utilized, I think, like you said, let's see what he can do as an every snap player on defense before we thrust him into any other role. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And as always, I'm joined by Mr. Travis Rogers, the People's Champion, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on Twitter at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house is Locked On Rams house?